So my name's Amanda Spivak. I'm at the University of Georgia, and I'm the lead PI in this project. But like Tana Marie said, this has been a really collaborative project, and we're excited to share our results today. So parallel grid ditches have been installed in roughly 90% of marshes along the Mid-Atlantic and New England. And these ditches have a number of impacts on marsh functioning. And some of these only become clear, after really long periods, so decades to hundreds of years after the ditches have been installed. One of these long-term impacts is illustrated here in these LiDAR data. So this is one of our study sites. This is the Great Barnstable Marsh on Cape Cod. And what you'll see up here in the northeast corner is we have a lot of ditches, and the color in the LiDAR are these cooler colors, so blues and greens and yellows, indicating that they're at a lower elevation compared to our mid-marsh areas and in the northeast quadrant, where we don't have ditches. And these are in redder colors indicating higher elevation. And so what these data indicate is that where we have ditches, we have a lower elevation, and this has implications for the sustainability of the marsh, particularly with rising sea levels and increased intensity and frequency of coastal storms. So the motivations of this project included understanding the long-term impacts of ditching, as well as how managers navigate these impacts when making their decisions. And so at the outset of the project, we reached out to managers at local, state, and federal agencies, and this was really led by Tana Marie. And we wanted to learn about what management priorities were. And through these conversations, we learned that managers are facing highly localized and complex scenarios, and that these force trade-off decisions. Managers are often making decisions in response to an on-the-ground problem, and the implications of these actions are only learned later. And finally, this trial and error approach can be costly, both in terms of time and money, which we know are limiting resources. And so our overarching goal is to understand how the long-term impacts of ditching on marsh ecosystems, to understand these long-term impacts, and to support end users in assessing the trade-offs of ditch and runoff management. And so we had several sub-goals here, and one was just identifying these knowledge gaps in terms of managing marsh hydrology and drainage, quantifying the impacts of ditching on ecosystem services and sustainability, developing a two-dimensional model that predicts changes in elevation and geomorphology in ecosystem services in response to hydrologic alterations and relative sea level rise, and then translating our model and field results into decision support tools, which can be broadly applicable across a large geographic range. And so that hopefully makes these tools transferable to many other systems. Our research questions were, we had two main research questions. One was, how are the metrics of marsh ecosystem services and sustainability affected by ditch density and tidal range? And secondly, how do hydrologic management approaches interact with sea level and tide range to affect marsh sustainability? In the field, we conducted surveys of elevation and pond depth. We characterized plant community composition and production. And then we looked at soils, both in terms of the physical properties and biogeochemical processes. And you're going to hear about some of our key results a little bit later on from Sharon Luck, who's a graduate student in my lab. Some of the resulting data then fed into and were used to validate this two-dimensional model. This is the conceptual design or diagram of the model, and Julio is going to talk much more about this a little bit later on. The results of the model and our field efforts are the basis of the decision support tool. We developed this web interface and these drop-down menus and the options in consultation with our end users from these different agencies. And we hope that our results from the tool will be of use to many of you. So I'll just wrap up by putting up the link to our website here and my contact information, and I'll hand it back over to Tana Marie. Thank you.